What comes to mind when you think about California in the mid to late 60s? Surfing? Beach boys? Fast boats? What about the Myers Manx VW Dune Buggy? Hello, I'm your host, Gary Neidert, and you're listening to My First Ride podcast. During the mid to late 60s, all kinds of recreation was available in California. Of course, surfing and the Beach Boys is top of mind. They recorded great songs about girls, cars, and playing on the beach. During that time, building vehicles to play on the sand dunes became extremely popular. Take an old truck chassis, cut and weld, put big tires on it, and presto, you've got a dune buggy. Well, there was a guy that built sailboats and surfed. He then turned his attention to playing on the sand dunes. He started making fiberglass bodied dune buggies, but as a business, it wasn't profitable because the price point was just a little bit too much. It cost just a little bit too much money, and he wasn't making that much money on each one he manufactured. So after manufacturing a few units of the original dune buggy, he revamped the design and mated the fiberglass body to a VW chassis, and the Myers Manx was born. The creative genius behind this new trend was Bruce Myers. He went on to inspire a whole new industry with this simple but sexy design. Many companies copied what he created. However, they were never the same as the Myers original creation. The inspiration for this story came from a local car show that my wife and I attended in April of this year, and the show was produced by Mustang Sally Productions. It was held at a local Bass Pro Shop, and it had about 200 vehicles there. I mean, it was a great show, and with all types of vehicles there, and they were all fantastic. I mean, the whole gamut: hot rods, current cars, old cars, rat rods, everything. It was cool. So my wife and I were walking through and taking photos of some of the vehicles. We came across a blue metal flake fiberglass dune buggy. As we got closer, I noticed it was a Myers Manx. As we talked with the owner about his Myers Manx, he began to talk about the background of his car. Turns out it was signed by none other than Bruce Myers of Myers Manx fame. Yes, that Bruce Myers. Well, this all got me to thinking back when I was in high school and the memories of my dad buying a VW dune buggy. Unfortunately, it was not a Myers Manx, but it was well done and it looked fantastic. The color was metal flake blue with gray spoke mags and big tires, and it was a lot of fun to drive. On this episode, I'm going to talk about the origins of the Myers Manx and what's going on with the company now. So this information comes from Wikipedia, and then towards the end of this, I want to talk about an article about what's going on with the company now. But here's from Wikipedia. It says the Myers Manx Dune Buggy is a small recreational vehicle originally designed for desert racing by California engineer, artist, boat builder, and surfer Bruce Myers. It was produced by his company, B.F. Myers and Company, from 1964 to 1971 in the form of car kits applied to shorten chassis of the Volkswagen Beetles. The car line dominated dune buggy racing, or dune racing, in its time, breaking records immediately, and was eventually released in street-oriented models. Drawing on his experience in the sailboat construction, Myers modeled and built his first dune buggy, Old Red, which was a shortened VW Beetle, in late 1963 to May 1964 in his garage in Newport Beach, California. The first known street legal fiberglass dune buggy, it featured a unibody shell that fused body, fenders, and frame while retaining just the engine, transmission, and other mechanicals of the VW, and with no top and no hood. The use of compound curves throughout the body provided great rigidity. The fenders were arched high to make room for large, knobby dirt racing wheels. The Manx name for the shortened, taller-wheeled, more maneuverable VW Beetle dune buggies refers to and derives from the comparably stubby Manx cat breed. They're short-spined and stubby-tailed to tailless, long-legged, and known for their turning ability while chasing prey. The Myers Manx logo prominently featured a Manx cat. Myers produced kits later in '64 and into 1965, marketed under the name Myers Manx. Although this early design was critically acclaimed and even featured on the April 1967 cover of Car and Driver magazine and drew much attention, it proved too expensive to be profitable. Ultimately, only 12 kits of the monocoque Manx were produced. Myers and a friend, they were both amateur racers, broke the Ensenada to La Paz run's record of 39 hours by over 4 hours. According to James Hale, compiler of the Dune Buggy Handbook, this feature ushered in an era of Myers Manx domination in off-road events and the formation of NORA, National Off-Road Racing Association. The commercially manufactured Myers Manx Mark I featured an open-wheeled fiberglass body shell coupled with the shortened Volkswagen Beetle frame using the flat-4 engine and transaxle. It was a small car with a wheelbase 14 inches shorter than a stock VW Beetle. It was light and had better maneuverability. For this reason, the car is capable of very quick acceleration. Well, I guess if you want to call whatever you get from 40 horsepower to 60 horsepower quick. Anyway, so very quick acceleration, wink, wink, and good off-road performance despite not being a four-wheel drive vehicle. The street legal Myers Manx redefined and filled a recreational and competitive niche that had been essentially invented by the first civilian Jeep in 1945. The commercial Myers Manx received widespread recognition when it defeated motorcycles, trucks, and other cars to win the inaugural 1967 Mexican 1000 race. Now, this was the predecessor of the Baja 1000. It crossed automotive press genre lines, being selected as the cover story in the August 1966 issue of Hot Rod magazine. Approximately 6,000 of the original Myers Manx Dune buggies were produced, but when the design became popular, it spawned many copies. It's estimated 250,000 worldwide copies were made by other companies. Although already patented, Myers and Company lost in court to the copiers. The judge rescinded Myers' patent as unpatentable, opening the floodgates to the industry he started. Since then, numerous vehicles of the general dune buggy or beach buggy body type, some VW-based, others not, have been and continued to be produced. B.F. Myers and Company also produced other Beetle-based vehicles, say that fast 3 times, including the May 1970 Car and Driver magazine cover Manx SR variant, street roadsters, borrowing some designs from the Porsche 914. The Myers Toad, that is spelled TOW''D. It's a non-street legal racing vehicle designed to be towed to the desert or beach. The Myers Toadster, TOW''DSTER, a street legal hybrid of the two, and Myers Resorter, a small recreational or resort vehicle inspired by touring motorcycles. The company ceased operation in 1971 after financial troubles, including with the Internal Revenue Service. And Bruce Myers himself had already left the company by then. So fast forward to 2000. He goes through a period of time where he doesn't even want to hear the term dune buggy. But things began to fall in place to get his attention back on the Myers Manx and the dune buggy. So in 2000, Bruce Myers created a resurgence of interest by founding Myers Manx Incorporated, based in Valley Center, California, and offering the classic Manx series, a limited edition of 2000. In 2002, the Manxter 2+2 and Manxter Dual Sport were born. These two new models are modernizations of the original design, but are sized for a full-length Beetle floor plan. Custom versions for higher power engines and other variations are also available. Some people now are putting Subaru engines in VW Beetles, some of the Myers Manx, some of the dune buggies, and they're a lot more reliable than the Volkswagen engine, although I think the Volkswagen engine is kind of cool, but the Subaru engine offers a lot more horsepower. In the spring of 2009, Myers reintroduced the shortened wheelbase named the Kickout Manx and was available in two models. The Kickout Manx Traditional is an updated version of the original Manx concept with wider fenders, plus a front hinged hood providing extra storage and easier access to electricals. Now, the Kickout Manx SS is a much more modern version with headlights flared into the hood, curved windshield, sculpted rear deck cover, and twin roll hoops. As of 2012, Myers Manx kits are based on the original Beetle and Super Beetle models, which are rear engine, rear wheel drive. No Myers Manx kits are based on the front engine, front wheel drive platforms. Aftermarket frames are available, designed to duplicate VW chassis dimensions and provide improvements such as more modern or more rugged components. Now, here's where the story takes a turn. On November 9th of 2020, it was announced that Bruce and Winnie Myers had sold their company to Trousdale Ventures. The new company would be called Myers Manx LLC. So the Myers Manx Corporation, the company itself was picked up and the tradition carried on. Now I want to read a little bit from an article that was in Bloomberg. It's written by Hannah Elliott, and this was published December 22nd of 2020. The title of the article, Myers Manx, the original beachcomber, aims for return to relevance. So here's what she says. The centerpiece of Philip Seraphim's Los Angeles home is his garage. The immaculate space holds two of the most collectible cars in the world. His rough CTR Yellowbird and Lancia Stratos Zero, a wedge on four wheels in burnt caramelized orange. The 34-year-old is the son of Fayez Seraphim, the billionaire part owner of the NFL's Houston Texans and one of the largest shareholders of pipeline company Kinder Morgan. Trousdale Adventures LLC, based in Los Angeles and Austin, which the younger Seraphim founded, completed the acquisition of Myers Manx on November 9 of 2020. He bought the brand from Myers, who was 93 at the time of purchase, and his wife Winnie, on the recommendations of a mutual friend, the auto designer Freeman Thomas. Shortly after Myers sold the company, unfortunately, he died in California on February 19th of 2021 at the age of 94. The man had a long run. Seraphim comes by his love for the Myers Manx honestly. He's owned them for nearly 2 decades, including his current stash of a yellow 1964 nicknamed Sunshine and a 1967 version in emerald green. He says, "They put a smile on my face and others. It's the only car I own that my 5-year-old daughter even cares about going for rides in. She's just crazy over it." So the popularity of the Myers Manx, it's long-lived, starting in the mid to early 60s, all the way up to here in 2021. It's a cool-looking vehicle, and it spawned a lot of copycats, and my dad owned the copycat, but it was a nice-looking copycat. So this was a great journey back to history for me, back in my memories of thinking about the Dune Buggy, about how my dad said, "Don't you ever drive that on the beach," which to me at that time was saying, "Oh, go take it on the beach," which I did and almost got in trouble with it, but I didn't. I thought I was going to wind up splashing all the way into the water and sinking it, but it didn't work. But I got it out, and I never did get in trouble. He probably knew that I took it out, rode it on the beach and whatever, even after I took it to the car wash and sprayed it down. So, but it was a lot of fun. It was a cool vehicle to drive, and it was indeed a great handling car. Wasn't very fast, but it was a great handling car. So that's my story, and that's my approach to the Myers Manx story. So have you ever driven a Myers Manx? Did you own a Myers Manx? Or have you driven or owned one of the copycats? Let me know. I'd love to hear your story about owning and driving one of the Myers Manx, either the Myers Manx or the copy. So there we go. It's a great vehicle, lots of fun. Well, what's coming up next on My First Ride? Well, I'm constantly searching for people that would enjoy telling the stories of their first rides and how their lives were influenced by them. And I bet you probably know someone that would be a great guest for My First Ride podcast, right? Let me know a little bit about them and their story. What about you telling your story on the podcast? Let me know a little bit about you and your first ride. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more. Now, just recently, we have gone on to Google Podcasts. So look for us on iTunes and Google Podcasts. And of course, you can also go to the website at myfirstridepodcast.com. One final thought. You may not have your first ride, but you still have the memories. It's time to share them. Contact me if you have any questions regarding today's podcast, or you'd like to be a guest on My First Ride podcast. I'm Gary Neidert, and you've just experienced My First Ride podcast. Call me 972-771-7899, or send me an email if you want to be on one of the episodes. myfirstridepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.